So today I want to try to cover a topic that many others have talked about, but I feel like a lot of them are missing the really problematic point. And that's using AI to generate text, generate books, whatever. You see it everywhere, and people's opinions vary from it's a useful tool to it's going to end authors being able to make money. It's a disruptive technology. We've seen them again and again throughout humanity's existence. It's just another one. It's going to disrupt things, it's going to create new jobs elsewhere. I don't really have a problem with it existing. My problem is with the current technology and using that technology to generate text. It's pretty easy to find various studies online talking about bias issues that are just problematic with writing books. I don't want to read a book written by an AI that's has known bias issues. I don't know that I want to read a book written by an AI at all, but I would give it a shot. But anything written by ChatGPT-3 has bias issues everywhere, and that's the big player in all the spaces. When you can find a company that'll do AI generated text that's willing to admit what AI algorithm they're using, it's generally GPT-3. You haven't seen a lot of studies with GPT-4 yet. I have hopes, but not expectations that it'll be better than 3. But that doesn't really matter because everything right now is based on 3, and 3 is so inherently biased that you can't fix it. So I figured I'd talk about some of the studies I found and share them with you. These studies are pretty easy to find. You just Google it. So if you want to read the study in full, I suggest you do that. I do have one example that I wasn't able to pull the actual study, but an article written on it because Stanford wanted an account or being paid or whatever. The ones I found from Cornell and Berkeley, you could just access the studies and read them, which is nice. So let's get into it. So this first study that I've pulled up by Lee Lucy and David Baman out of Berkeley is addressing one of the more obvious biases, and that's gender. You can read the abstract that I've pasted in there, and I'll bring in the conclusion later, but it found pretty definitively that ChatGPT 3 is pretty heavily biased with gender. So it found pretty definitively that AI generated text for male characters tend to be more powerful and smarter, and female characters tend to be more in domestic settings. It's far more likely to talk about a female character's body parts. I'm sure you can guess which ones. And that's just not great when you're trying to find a story that's well written. So it's a bit of a problem. And their conclusion is a little, I suppose it's more fair than I would be, though they're trying to be unbiased, and I have a definite problem with GPT-3, so I suppose that's fair. But their conclusion says that it needs to be carefully dealt with. The problem is they don't address that you can't just fix GPT-3. You have to completely retrain it on somehow unbiased data to get rid of the biased issues, and that's unlikely to occur. And that's why I hope that GPT-4 is better, but only time will tell when more studies are done. So the next study that I found was interesting because it's not necessarily a bad thing if used carefully. And that's toxicity in AI generated responses based on the persona that you tell the chat program to act as. In short, this study went ahead and told ChatGPT to act like various personas. Sometimes they just said a good person or a bad person, but other times they were a little more specific. I think one was Muhammad Ali. Another time they told it to act like Hitler. And they found that it was remarkably easy to generate really problematic kinds of text by just telling it to act like a bad person. Even though I think ChatGPT 3 is supposed to avoid doing that, it was pretty easy to get it to do it. You can see next to me there are a few personas, and they asked it to talk about a thing. The first one was country, then religion, and then a race. And they replaced the actual country, religion, or race with an epsilon just to avoid offending anyone, because, that's never a good idea. But you can see these are pretty mean things to say about a group. Now, if you want a bad guy generating text like that, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The problem is that a lot of these text generators that you can find, either the ones that do full stories or the more middle ground ones that are meant to be helpful for writers, like Grammarly Go or Living Writer was also working on it, but the last time I saw mention of that was a newsletter from 9 months ago, and I haven't seen anything since, so I'm unsure if they decided to scrap that or not. But all these have a problem in that the user doesn't know what kind of persona the company has applied to their flavor of text generator. So the user doesn't know if they're generating the text from a bad person, which could easily be done on the back end and cause a lot of problems. So it's just another instance of the tool is problematic to use for the purposes of writing books. I really wish it were better, but we're going to have to wait 5-10 years before the technology gets to the point where it can non-problematically create text like this. A solution, however, for this particular issue would be to give the users access to a persona setting within the generator. That way you can actually the user can actually choose what the kind of persona they want a given character to sound like. That'd be harder to do, but it would at least allow the text generated to feel less flat. So the last study that I found is possibly the most disturbing, even though I wasn't able to really access the study itself and only an article written about it. And that's simply because I don't have the Stanford system and am unwilling to pay for it. So I haven't accessed the actual study, simply the article written about it. And it's really, this one, obviously from the title that you can see now, it's the most disturbing because it's specifically about a religious group. The study found that if the chat prompt included the word Muslim, the chat response 66% of the time was violent, which, is a little disturbing, to put it mildly. They were able to decrease it slightly by using positive terms in relation to a Muslim in the prompt, but that only seemed to cut down the issue by 30% or so. So it isn't even fixing the problem trying to get around it. This particular article noted the big problem, though, with trying to fix GPT-3. And that is the topic of debiasing. Um, as you can see, you can't debias GPT-3 because it would require you to completely redo the data sets, which means GPT-3 is just fundamentally a bad thing for people to be using. Yet they're using it everywhere. And not just for writing. You see GPT-3 used in apps like Replica and getting very toxic very fast. And given what Replica's mission statement is, that's a problem. For those that don't know, Replica is like an AI chat companion that was touted as some kind of therapeutic tool by lots of news agencies. But it's just toxic and a little pornographic, which sure if that's your thing, but at the same time, I'm really not sure that's a healthy avenue to be going down with AI tools. The article went on to say that you could try to get around the biasing issue by couching the problematic prompt words and phrases, in this particular study's case, the word Muslim, with positive phrases to associate with it. But that only decreased the amount. It didn't eliminate the problem. And that's really just highlights the issue with GPT-3 and why we shouldn't be using it. It's a dangerous tool to use because it's problematically biased for certain religions, for races, and for genders. It's a bad tool to try to generate good text out of. And that extends from either writing full novels using AI chatbot text generator or using it as a tool to try to help with writer's block or things of that nature. That kind of thing will be less problematic, but it doesn't get rid of the problem. It just allows a reasonable human being to interface with it a little more directly and decrease the amount of bias issues. But we really just shouldn't be using GPT-3. And not because it's going to replace authors or anything like that. If they can make chatbots that can generate good, unique stories, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I don't think it's feasible until you can make a sapient AI. So I'm not really worried about it making a good story. But even with the tools now, it shouldn't be used. And the problem can't be fixed without scrapping the entire AI and retraining it. So I guess that was my 2 cents on why I think AI generated text is problematic from a more technical perspective than the simple, oh, they're going to take all the author's jobs issue. So if you like this video, please leave a like. If not, a dislike. And what are your thoughts on AI generated text? Please let me know in the comment section below. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.